Let's head down for round number 6 here from Denver. Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Denver. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Reed Duke, and we're underway in round number 6 where we've got Shahar Shenhar playing Mardu Vehicle, sitting at 5-0. His opponent from Canada, Paul Dean, on Teamer Etherworks.
Now this should be a cool matchup, and not to be contradictory, but Paul Dean's deck is a little deceptive here. He is playing a Teamer Energy deck, but instead of using Etherworks Marvel like we've seen a lot of other people do in the feature match area, he's actually using Dynavolt Tower as his energy payoff card, and he's more of a 3-color control deck with Torrential Gearhulk and lots of card drawing.
Interesting. So this is an energy-based Teamer deck, but the payoff is not Etherworks Marvel.
Right. Yeah, he wants to use Dynavolt Tower in addition to Harness Lightning, and he even has a copy of Deadlock Trap in his main deck, and that's what he's using his energy for. Meanwhile, Shahar Shenhar playing a pretty classic deck in Mardu Vehicles, and he has the dream start that you always hope for, which is turn 1 Toolcraft Exemplar, turn 2 Smuggler's Copter on the play. He should tread a little bit lightly here, though, against the 2 open mana of Paul Dean, perhaps thinking about a removal spell.
It looks like Shahar's going to tread heavy here.
That's okay, though. If he had not attacked with Smuggler's Copter, Paul could have the option of killing the Toolcraft Exemplar, taking 0 damage that turn, so it's not even clear that that was a costly decision for Shahar.
Yeah, Shahar knows that Harness Lightning is going to get something. He did have a little bit of choice over what it got, but it would have cost him.
Mm-hmm. And that's not even to mention the possibility that Paul could just have nothing to cast, or he could be casting Anticipate, something like that. I think it's worth it to, when in doubt, just try to attack with your creatures. That's what they're there for.
Not mine. mine draw me 2 cards and gain me 2 life. We might get to that a little bit later, though, as our Time Walk match has Pascal Maynard versus Ari Lax. I was promised Cloud Blazers.
Yeah, that'll be a sweet match as well. And if Shahar has his way, this one will be pretty quick. His game plan is definitely to finish off Paul Dean before he can establish his Dynavolt Towers and deconstruct all of Shahar's creatures.
Yeah, meanwhile, Shahar's just chipping away, but not for a lot, just a couple of damage here, or 3 damage, I should say. But because on the other side, Paul has fired off 2 Harness Lightnings now.
Mm-hmm. And note that this is already Shahar's 4th turn. He doesn't yet have a 3rd land in play.
Yeah, how big of an issue is that for Shahar's deck? We know that the Vehicles deck tends to be pretty low to the ground.
It is. Yeah, the first 2 land drops are certainly the most important, and you see Shahar did make his 3rd one here. That said, you have the looting of Smuggler's Copter, you've got Clues, you've got Bring Rex, Scrapyard, Scroungers, you've got 4 mana spells. So it is a deck that can use its mana and wants to use its mana. And in a perfect world, you would not miss that 3rd land drop.
Deadlock Trap here for Paul Dean. So he's got a few other energy payoffs, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, it's certainly a place to spend some energy. You can see that you can tap a creature or even a Planeswalker. May as well just say Gideon on it there. But its activated abilities can't be activated as well, so you can do some upkeep stuff. But does cost you an energy per activation.
I like Deadlock Trap. I think in a deck like Paul's, where he has set himself up to have so much extra energy, sort of like a rich man's Icy Manipulator, and we know how good that card used to be in the old days.
No mana to activate this one.
No mana to activate. The only downside, as we can see this turn, is that there's an investment cost. You have to put it into play tapped. You spend your 3 mana, you don't get any benefit till the next turn.
Yeah, which is a big deal. When you're facing down a Mardu Vehicles deck that's capable of piling on a huge amount of damage. For example, right now, it looks like the Caravan's going to get crewed by Thalia, and that represents an additional 5 damage
So Paul down to the very crucial life total of 3, meaning an unlicensed disintegration at any point in the game could finish him off.
Third burn spell for Paul Dean. You'd think that would be enough, but he really has not been able to keep his life total up down to 3 as he draws a glimmer of genius. He certainly won't have time for that this turn, but he's got another Harness Lightning in hand, Reed, so he can take out yet another threat and then use the Deadlock Trap, but he is precariously close to death here, like you said.
Precarious, yes, but I think he's got a better chance of stabilizing than may be obvious because of the Deadlock Trap, and because that is going to represent neutralizing one creature every turn at the cost of no mana.
Still, I got to look at Shahar's hand, and he's got a Scrap Heap Scrounger. He's also got a land and a Smuggler's Copter in his hand, so he's not short on threats. It doesn't look like he's going to die this turn, Paul. But unfortunately for Paul, you know, once again, we see this with the vehicles over and over again. You know, the creature that you played that turn, it was never blocking, especially that one. And so he just gets to crew up basically for free and still have all of his attackers available. Paul Dean's actually going to use the Deadlock Trap to tap down the Inventor's Apprentice and then instead use his Harness Lightning to kill the Caravan there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Take the more powerful card off the battlefield, cut Shahar's mana even more than it is already.
It is an interesting choice, though, right? Because each vehicle takes effectively another creature to make it into a creature. So if you kill all the creatures, then the vehicles can't do anything, though. I suppose Paul's looking at it like, well, I'm never going to be able to clear the board enough.
Right, but you make an excellent point, and maybe in the face of Deadlock Trap, leaving Shahar with a vehicle is more valuable.
Deadlock Trap's really good against, I mean, it's effectively tapping 2 creatures, right? If they ever crew a vehicle and you tap that down.
Although the flip side of that is if Shahar just says, okay, declare my attack, now Paul taps his best creature, he just uses that to crew, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It is, and it really, the thing that makes it worthwhile one way or the other is your life total, because Shahar can just say, I can just kill you. Like, I don't need a vehicle to kill you with the board that I have. And this is not good news for Paul Dean. He's firing off a glimmer of genius on his main phase here.
Yeah, so he really desperately needs to find a 1-mana spell, but does not do it.
He does not find it. He did find yet another Harness Lightning. I got to say, I'm impressed by the Mardu Vehicles deck in Shahar's hands there, because really, you know, he had a few of his early things killed. Paul played at least 3 burn spells that game, all cheap, costing 1 or 2 mana. And Shahar just sort of quietly moved his way through it, didn't really blink.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but I think I would have been on Team Shahar if I was playing in this tournament, the Mardu Vehicles. I really like the deck. I like both its power and its reliability in terms of curving out. Shahar's deck list looks really, really similar to what crowd favorite Sandy Dog MTG, Brandon Burton, he used to win in Magic Online PTQ last weekend.
That guy just wins a tournament every weekend.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of if he decides to travel or not. Because if he didn't travel, he's winning one on Magic Online, and if he did, it's a GP or something here on camera.
Yeah, Modern Grand Prix a month ago with Searing Blazes, and Standard PTQ last weekend with Unlicensed Disintegration instead. Here we have another cool matchup. Again, between 2 blue-red based energy decks. Greg Orange playing the blue-red control, similar to Ben Sek and Patrick Chapin that we saw a couple rounds ago, and Ben Rubin playing a Teamer Aetherworks deck, more centered around Aetherworks Marvel, of course.
On-demand event, Commander 17, please meet at the red gathering point. On-demand event, Commander 17.
So being this deep in Game 1 with nothing on the battlefield, looks like it should favor Greg Orange, being able to pass with lots of cards in hand and permission mana open. Although I will say we're getting to the stage in the game where Ben Rubin can be hardcasting Emrakul the Promised End. So if Greg didn't come prepared with a whole bunch of summary dismissals, you never know what could happen.
I bet you Greg did. Well, let's find out. You set that up quite nicely. All right, that is not a summary dismissal, but he's going to go digging
He's
for
digging,
one.
yeah.
He could have one in his hand. I didn't quite see. But.
And even a Void Shatter might not be the end of the world here, as long as
Yeah.
he can keep the 13-13 off the battlefield. It's not like Greg has a big complicated board that Ben could dismantle when he
Right.
takes the Mindslave return. It's
Yeah, still at 20 life as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Lot of flexibility here for Greg, but look, if Ben just gets to resolve Emrakul and Greg doesn't have an answer, I mean, we see how that goes a million times. It's just 2-turn clock, so.
Hey, Marshall, you see that card in Greg Orange's exiled zone
I
there?
do indeed. I mean, how
Confirmed
many could he
suspicions.
really have? I love that card.
He has 6 clues in play, so I don't know exactly what happened, but it could have been confirmed suspicions, torrential Gearhulk confirmed suspicions.
Oh my God, that could have been it. Oh no, it just resolved. By the way, I think he found a magnifying glass, unless I'm seeing.
Wow, I love Greg Orange's style. This is my kind of deck.
Dude, we don't call him the Citrus Assassin for nothing, man. Greg Orange brings it.
I really like from Greg that he didn't crack any of the clues at the end of the turn, despite having open mana. He doesn't want to give Ben more toys to play with when he's taking the Emrakul turn. And Ben faced
Yeah,
with
this does look like a miserable Emrakul. I mean, you really expect to get something out of it, but like
not even a
he
wandering
didn't even
fumeral
cast
to,
anything. Yeah.
to attack in.
Wow, that might be the first time I've seen somebody cast an Emrakul and do nothing. He just literally didn't even tap a mana.
So Emrakul's text basically read, Greg gets to draw an extra card.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, when you put it that way, it looks bad. This just in.
But let's not forget there's still 13-13 on the
Yes.
battlefield. Greg can bounce it with Jace,
Yes.
but then he's going to have the
This just happens again. Oh no, he
Face
played
the
a
same
Wandering
situation.
Fumeral. I guess that would happen anyway. No.
and this is not Reflector Mage, so Ben doesn't have to wait any time to just recast it.
Yeah, we'll hang out. Our other match is just getting started, but we'll hang out here for just a moment. I mean, I'm assuming that this sequence ends with Ben Rubin winning. Like, the person who gets to just keep casting Emrakuls should pull ahead, right?
Traditionally,
Yeah.
this is a bit of unfamiliar ground for me, and I'm not
Yeah.
easily able to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's
here.
why I don't want to leave this. I have to see how it ends. All right, an Emrakul, but wait, there's more. Servant of the Conduit as
And
well.
what Ben can do here is waste 2 energy off or 2 loyalty off the Jace by bouncing Servant of the Conduit, and then Greg might untap without an answer to the Emrakul.
Man, magnifying glass. So I think Greg did play that Fumeral last turn, though, right? And
Yes.
that means that he's going to lose it, which isn't great. Ben's going to be happy just to get something out of this. Though, like you said before, let's not forget the whole 13-13 flample.
On-demand
That's the
event.
R&D term.
Commander,
I'll explain it to you later, Reed.
Please meet
Okay.
at the red gathering point. On-demand event. Commander.
Learned that one from my friend
Please
Ian.
meet at the red gathering point.
You'd like him.
Yeah. I think I would.
All right, so he's using up as much loyalty off of Jace as he can by returning just the Servant of Conduit to his hand. And let's see what Greg finds here.
Currently, Greg has nothing, but he's got a Jace, which can see 2 cards. He has 6 clues in play, and his deck is full of more card drawing.
I wonder what he's looking for. Looking at the cards that we've seen him cast so far, they've been card draw spells, counter spells, or some type of creature land, or we see that magnifying glass, which I'm still like, wow, that is an actual magnifying glass. What is he? What can he
I'm
find?
taking a look at Greg's deck list, and his best answer, believe it or not, the card we saw in Paul Dean's match, Deadlock Trap.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the tricky thing is he needs to find it this turn because Deadlock Trap enters battlefield tapped. You have to invest a turn, and Greg cannot afford to take 2 hits.
Well, he's digging. He's already cracked one of those 6 clues that we see on the battlefield. And he's going for another one. Almost took an energy counter off to do it, but found it. Well,
Found Torrential Gearhulk.
and he has the land for it. Does that get him anywhere, though? Well, he's passed the turn back. It's hard to imagine, though, that Greg can assemble a win.
Though Ben Rubin's put to an interesting test here, whether to attack Greg or to attack Jace. I guess it probably makes sense to attack Greg's life total. Getting the Emrakul bounced is probably even better than getting it fogged for a turn.
Yeah, it might be, right? And also that would take Jace off the battlefield in that scenario anyway.
Right. But Chandra, Torch of Defiance, can do the job as well, ticking up and dealing 2 damage to Jace. That's if it resolves, which is a big if against Greg Orange's deck.
Yeah, if I was in Ben Rubin's seat, I would actually assume that it wouldn't. Don't know that would change my play, but something just to be aware of. All right, so here's the Gear Hulk. Man, that Confirmed Suspicions is down there still. That is sweet. All right, looks like he's going to negate it. Yeah. Okay. So Greg ends up with a Torrential Gear Hulk out of the exchange. But he's not going to be able to race Emrakul with it.
No, not with Ben Rubin's life total at 20.
Right. So more interesting to me is if Ben decides not to attack Jace, Greg bounces Emrakul and then finds a counter in the interim, right?
That would work, yes.
To actually take the threat of Emrakul away in a more permanent fashion. And it looks like Ben is hemming and hawing. You said this was a big test for him, but he has to be worried that he won't have Emrakul down anymore. And if he decides to attack Greg, he's saying, this is our plan.
Yeah, he's surely thinking along the same lines that you are, just trying to rack his brain for the ways Greg can navigate to beat this Emrakul.
He knows it's going to take him a lot of mana to do so. Ooh, that was a negate, I believe, off the top. So that does not get the job done for Greg. This has been fun. I really like the way this one's coming around. Very critical turns in the middle stages of these last couple of sequences.
There Jace goes.
Okay. And remember, Greg has a lot of mana as well as 4 clues available.
I noticed there that Greg actually played Spire Bluff Canal instead of Wandering Fumarole because he doesn't want to get his creature.
All right, he learned his lesson. Yeah.
Eaten.
What happened to him last time? Interestingly, Servant of the Conduit doing a significant amount of damage, dropping Greg Orange down to 5 life. I'm assuming that those lands laid out on the top are for Emrakul specifically. They are. Oh, and he did find a Torrential Gear Hulk. I think we saw, a Void Shatter in the yard somewhere?
Must be.
Yeah, there it is. Wow, so Greg actually does find a way to neutralize the biggest possible threat. And he's also got 2 Torrential Gear Hulks on the battlefield now. Has he actually turned this around?
Ben still gets an Emrakul turn,
yes.
So we'll see what he can make with this. Well navigated by Greg. You could tell he was thinking about that ahead of time because he used the negate out of his graveyard to counter the Chandra, saving the Void Shatter for,
That's right.
for the Emrakul.
All right. I'm assuming that what we just saw there was Jace gets cast and it got negated.
Great play.
And then what happened to the Gear Hulk there?
It got Harnessed Lightning by Ben Rubin's Harnessed Lightning.
Okay, Ben just cast his own, but made sure he did it when the shields were down for Greg.
I only now noticed that Ben is packing something in the double digits of energy down there.
He's got 3 dice worth.
And just spent 6.
Yeah. Though he may not be perfectly efficient with those dice. I see a 3 and a 2. So well, we may never know. Of course, if you want to check up on our main match, it's in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. But I can't leave this one. This has just been too good.
A big question here is going to be, has Ben found a second copy of Emrakul by this point in the
Yeah.
By this point in the game? It is very late in the game.
He hasn't. At least not in his hand. He's got a couple of Harness Lightning and an Ishkanah. He just drew another Servant of the Conduit. Ishkanah looks pretty good here, though.
Right. Greg's down to 5, and even though Ben is playing a Temur color deck, he does have Aether Hub, produce black mana.
That's right. And as you noted, plenty of energy.
Wow, this game is remarkable. Greg has been in a pretty bad spot in a few of these turns, but if he does end up winning this game, I think it's going to be because of confirmed suspicions, because of all the clues that he got to have just sitting on the battlefield for all this time.
Is he going to crack one of those right now? Trying to dig for a counterspell for Ishkana? Oh, yeah, he sure is. Let's root around. I don't think that was a counterspell. Still got 2 more to go. Oh, he did find one.
Okay.
Void Shatter.
Very good for Greg there.
Oh, man. And Greg is now 2 turns away. Although the Harness Lightning may have something to say about that. And it in fact does. And we're kind of back to square one. Servant of the Conduit, though, for Ben Rubin. Leaves him with just a Harness Lightning in his hand.
The advantage that Ben has from his position is that his deck has a lot of Emrakuls in it. I think he has 3. And those are just very difficult, complicated threats for Greg to deal with if they ever come off the top for Ben.
But Greg is churning through those clues. He has now cracked all 6 of them, Reed.
Yeah, and he's needed all of them.
He really has. And he has his own burn spell for the Servant, leaving the board state with no permanents outside of lands, though. Wandering Fumarole, it's going to get in for 4.
Yep. And the magnifying glass can start doing its thing.
It really can. I'm not going to lie. That's what I really want to see. Attune with Ether, not a big threat.
Oh, and by the way, in addition to Emrakul, Ben Rubin also now has enough lands to cast Ulamog if he draws Ulamog Ceaseless.
He could just cast it? Wow. And there it is. We got a clue off of a magnifying glass.
I got teased for playing that card in Limited. Greg's bringing it to a standard Prix.
You probably shouldn't have played it. Let's be honest. All right.
I think I was just ahead of my time.
Constructed staple magnifying glass. Oh, man. Gosh, you know what's crazy, too? I keep thinking back to when Greg played that Wandering Fumarole into the Emrakul and, had it basically just die. He could have kept it in his hand, and that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And here he could have fired up 2 of them.
That was a fairly key detail in this game.
Yeah.
There's Deadlock Trap.
There's a Deadlock Trap. That's a nice little insurance plan. Ben Rubin, not lucky enough to open enough of those in Limited to remember what it did off the top of his head, though. He's also a double checker.
Yeah.
Like, I bet you anything if you asked him what the card did, he could tell you exactly, but he likes to be thorough.
Ooh, here we go.
Aetherwark's Marvel. No. Void Shatter.
Ben has had so many of his spells countered in this game. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I've had a chance to watch Greg Orange play quite a bit over the years. His first Pro Tour was the first one that I did coverage at, which was in Barcelona in 2012. And I remember we were flying in, and he was behind me with his dad. And, I heard them say something about Magic, and I was like, oh, I'm going for the Magic tournament too, cool. And I chatted with him, but he is a pure control player at heart. I mean, this guy, like him and Andrew Cuneo could talk for hours, I'm sure. And right on cue, he activates his magnifying glass to prove my point. Thank you, Greg. Which, by the way, makes his nickname that much better. The fact that he just plays these control decks. Oh, here's a Torrential Gearhulk. He's going to get a Glimmer, I guess. Oh, baby. That could be the death knell right there, right?
It's certainly getting close. Ben has another turn or 2 because of the Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. And his best draw here would definitely be one of those Ulamogs. He could take out both the Gearhulk and the Deadlock Trap.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And doesn't look like these libraries have many more than 20 cards in either of them.
Yeah, one hit could easily do it, especially Greg's. He's been just churning through. So he's attacking Ben Rubin down to 4. Ben does not crack the Puzzle Knot, at least not yet. Draws a card and passes the turn. That means that was not Ulamog. Anticipate for Greg Orange on end step. I like that the pace of play has quickened a little bit here. This is game 1.
These guys know already that this is shaping up to be a long one.
Yeah. Another Glimmer is what he found. And it's hard to imagine that Greg can't finish up here, though Ulamog would put a huge dent in his plans for sure. So he goes up to 7. He can attack for 5. That means Ben Rubin gets 1 additional turn. He now has 4 dice, by the way, on his energy. I like that. A second deadlock trap makes it very difficult for Ben to actually win this game. But let's see if he finds a top deck to keep him alive for even another turn.
I think he might have found Harness Lightning, which would allow the game to continue.
It would. Assuming that it resolves, which is a tough thing to assume. Oh, it's Chandra.
So that's a bit of a redraw, but the problem is he can no longer cast Ulamog.
Yeah, he's at 6 now. He did find the Harness Lightning. Let's see if it resolves. If it does, this could actually push this game even longer.
Wow, could Greg?
Maybe he could deck him.
Greg could be checking if he has any win conditions left in his deck. Greg's deck does not play Dynavolt Tower. He has 4 Wandering Fumaroles and 4 Torrential Gearhulks as the only cards capable of dealing damage.
And he doesn't have a counterspell right now? All right. I think he's going to get the glass going. Oh, baby. Crack a clue. I think he found a Fumarole, at least some type of dual land. I think this Gearhulk's dying. It did.
So, just to clarify, I haven't been keeping count of how many of Greg's win conditions have hit the bin.
Yeah.
But that was the impression I got from the looking through the graveyard.
That's what you would
there.
assume? Yeah, because what else is he looking for, right? Man, Chandra found the answer on the top of the library. That was his last chance. And now, if Greg is actually out of win conditions, Ben can just transition into the deck you plan. He has to be low on cards, Greg, in his library.
Ben Rubin's legacy as a Magic player is surely the ability to grind down an opponent physically, mentally, in game.
There's a Fumarole off the Glimmer of Genius.
That could still do it.
Physically, mentally.
And the Deadlock
great.
Trap actually being put to use to stop Chandra flavorfully.
Right. Right on the front of that card. Does tap it though, right?
Yes.
I mean, not super relevant, but I want to see it tap Planeswalker. But more relevantly, of course, it can't use its activated ability, which is why Greg's doing it. Wow, this is super cool.
Oh, another turn.
All right. Let's do it.
And I have to say,
This is absurd.
the rest of Ben's library has to be stacked. He's got 4 Eldrazi's still in there. We don't know how many Ishkanas and Marvels. But yeah, I mean, the
Ben goes
longer
up
this
to
game goes.
5 to not die to the Wandering Fumarole somehow. What in the world? Well, it is still 2 turns. He can hit for 4 here. That drops Ben to 1. He can crack the puzzle knot. That'll put him back to 4. And then theoretically next turn Greg can kill him. Let's see if Ben can find something now. I couldn't see.
Ben has the same demeanor every time he draws his card.
Yeah, he's a monster.
You never know.
Oh, it's a Whirler Virtuoso.
Put those 4 dice worth of energy to use.
Yeah, remember, Greg's at 5 life here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Greg has an answer for the Virtuoso. That's fine, but not before Ben gets to just unload.
I think he's wisely doing this in response to the Virtuoso trigger, which would mean 1 less Thopter to contend with.
Wait, but did I see a Kozilek's return in hand for Greg? Yes, I did. And you know what?
Wow.
He flashed it. He showed Ben Rubin a Kozilek's return and said, you make as many Thopters as you want, buddy. I'm just going to wipe them away and kill you with a Fumarole. What a game. Greg Orange takes game 1 from Ben Rubin, who just wouldn't die. Now, while we were watching that, you can see that it looks like Paul Dean has evened things up there on the bottom game, as they looks like the players are going to sideboards for game 3 as well. Ooh, baby.
Yeah, that was down to the wire.
Yeah, so what we're going to get to do then is we're going to get to watch the deciding game between Shahar and Paul. And once that ends, I have a good feeling that these two players will still be at it, and we can bump over and watch them. That was a sick game.
Yeah, it really was. Multiple Emrakul turns. Magnifying glass doing its work.
Yeah, he bounced Emrakul like at least once with Jace.
How many clues did Greg Orange crack in that game?
He had 6 when he came on. He churned right through all of those, and he used his magnifying glass like 2 or 3 times after that also. So 9-ish,
yep.
Maybe double digits. Oh, man. That might have been the only win condition left, by the way, that Wandering Fumarole. That could have been the only one left in his deck.
Very possible.
Yeah, that was great.
So it did look like Paul Dean performed better in the post-sideboard game. Off the sideboard, he's got access to various artifact destruction spells, Radiant Flames, additional copy of Deadlock Trap, which has been doing work so far this round, and a couple situational counter spells that he could consider, like Ceremonious Rejection, and 2 Thing in the Ice, which is a card that I think has been put to good use against vehicles decks.
It has to be. Just saves you a bunch of life early and gives you a good plan late.
Exactly. 4 toughness is a fairly sweet spot, blocks the Toolcraft Exemplars and the Scrap Heap Scroungers.
And you do just block, right? I mean, you're just like, you can't be so all in on transforming the Thing in the Ice. It just has to be like, nah, this thing's job is to block once and eat a removal spell, and then...
I think so, yeah. You also have to figure that the Mardu Vehicles player has a hard time leaving in cards like Galvanic Bombardment, Harness Lightning to finish off the Thing in the Ice. Shahar taking a mulligan.
Okay.
But his deck is extremely powerful, and he's on the play, so it's just going to take the right first few cards for him to get off on the right foot in this game. Off of his sideboard, he has access to a couple more Planeswalkers, which I think surely will come in. Chandra, Torch of Defiance, 2 more Gideons. And he could consider Fragmentize to combat Paul Dean's Dynavolt Towers.
That's an interesting... I find that really interesting, actually. Because those Dynavolt Towers can be so slow, to get set up. But they also can chew up Shahar's board in short order if they do.
Right.
So Shahar has to make this interesting decision on, do I want to fight that fight? Because I can ignore Dynavolt Tower, have 8 power in play by the time you play one, and maybe you can't even activate it right away, and just ignore it. Or I can try to fight that fight where I have the answer for it, and if the game goes long, you don't get to mow down multiple creatures of mine. Because remember, by putting Fragmentize in your deck, you are making it slower.
You bring up a great point, and it can be a really tough, frustrating question to answer, because if you're a Vehicles player, you play a game where you lose to Dynavolt Tower, you get dismantled, all your creatures getting bolted for free. It's not a good feeling. Next game, you want to bring in the Fragmentize so it doesn't happen again. But the thing is, like you say, is that really a winning battle? Are you going to try to fight the control player tit for tat in the long game?
Right. It's just, my gut tells me no. Also, the time when they get to play a Dynavolt Tower and they have assembled the necessary energy and you have the Fragmentize, that still doesn't feel good.
Right.
Like, you're like, Fragmentize that. They're like, kill your thing. And it's like, ugh, that's, I don't know. Doesn't feel like a fight that I want to. I'd rather just put in another threat and just be like, I hope you're dead by the time that thing's relevant.
Certainly the best strategy, the plan A for Shahar, is just to have a really good beatdown draw and run over Paul before you can even set up anything like that.
Right, and I mean, we can use this game as an example, right? Like right now, Shahar, as of a second ago, Shahar already had 4 power on the board. This before Paul could even cast a Dynavolt Tower, right? And in this case, he used a Galvanic Bombardment to take down one of the threats, which is something that you're going to see as well. But let's see what Shahar ends up with after this turn. Looks like another Thraben Inspector as well as the Cultivator's Caravan. Good start for Shahar.
especially given the mulligan to 6. He's been able to develop his mana, get some creatures on the board, and now if he runs out of gas due to the mulligan, he's got a couple clues that can refuel him. A deadlock trap.
All right, there's a trap for Paul Dean. Not going to do anything this turn, though, so he is going to take the brunt of this attack. Looks like it's going to be about 7 damage that he's going to take here.
That is if Shahar can find something to crew the caravan.
He's got in his hand a Scrap Heap Scrounger. Interestingly, he also has a Smuggler's Copter.
Right, so will he value the
both.
5 damage, or will he value putting both cards into play, using the caravan for mana?
That is the decision that Shahar is faced with right now.
Part of that might have to do if he suspects Paul Dean could have permission in his hand. If Paul, of course, has a handful of counterspells, best thing you can do is just put all your cards into play and have those counterspells be useless.
Yeah.
But if Paul has different defensive measures, then Shahar might really regret it if he misses out on 5 damage here.
All right, well, Shahar's decided, no, I'm going for it. You know, I think that the middle ground for Shahar as far as making that decision goes is, I mean, look at his board. That's not bad, right?
Not at all.
It's not everything on the battlefield at once, but I think he can live if Paul's plan is, okay, I'm going to leave up mana to counter your Smuggler's Copter. He's like, yeah, sure. Like, you're still taking a decent amount of damage here, 5 or, whatever it ends up being. Deadlock Trap, though, looking pretty decent here.
Definitely.
This is going to be interesting. Paul, this is a big turn for Paul. He's trying to stabilize after what was a pretty reasonable start for Shahar. A Galvanic Bombardment killing a veteran motorist, though, lessened that pressure significantly, and now Paul Dean theoretically can lean on this Deadlock Trap to take the biggest hitter away from Shahar. Ooh, here we go.
Yeah, that's what Paul needs. However, you can tell that was a card on Shahar's radar, and that probably had to do with why he decided to attack for 5. If he put another vehicle into play, sure, the vehicle lives through Radiant Flames, but he's not really going to be able to play 2 creatures to crew both vehicles. So this way, Paul has 5 less life. He can rebuy the Scrap Heap Scrounger. He's not going to get in damage due to the Deadlock Trap, but he can rebuild his board still fairly easily.
Yeah. And it looks like he's just going to use this turn to play the Smuggler's Copter and get back the Scrounger. We also have to remember that he has 2 clues that he could spend his mana on as well if he wished. Though it does feel like getting his board back in action again is more powerful.
Crucially, Paul Dean missed his land drop last turn.
Yeah, he's not going to this turn, but he kind of is. He's going to play Attune with Ether, which will let him hit his land drop for going forward, but of course, as a cost of that, we'll tap one of his lands, so he actually won't be up a mana from last turn. So, assuming that Shahar gets back his Scrounger here, will we see him just say, go to attacks?
I think so, although he has a nice configuration of 3 permanents where he could crew the Smuggler's Copter, then declare his attack. If Paul taps that, boom, use the Thopter to crew the caravan.
I like that. That's really nice. Another caravan off the top for Shenhar.
Not the best draw in the world, but don't forget Shahar also has 2 uncracked clues.
Yes.
So he's far from running out of gas here.
I think he's going to crack one of them immediately. See what he finds. Finds another land. I like your line. That is clever. I like just crewing up the Copter and saying, okay, what do you want to do, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
You want to take 3 and let me loot, or do you want to take 5 and no loot?
Paul could target a removal spell at the Copter. Then if Shahar crews the caravan, he
Tap
used
it.
the Deadlock Trap.
Double blue. Anticipate. All right. Well, we know what he's digging for. Galvanic Bombardment. He has one in his graveyard already. He didn't hit, though. So Paul's going to have to decide whether he'd rather take 3 with a loot or 5 without. Interesting.
He also gets to conserve an energy if he does say, sure, go ahead and attack me.
Yeah. And he's valuing his life total above any sort of long-term considerations. I think he's correctly recognized that if he's dead, the long-term won't matter anyway. So he can just hope that Shahar doesn't find anything backbreaking. And good luck for him. Shahar did not find anything backbreaking. He just looting away at planes here.
Another tiny factor in the deadlock trap decision is that Shahar now has an extra mana to work with in his post-combat main phase. That's relevant because he does have Cultivator's Caravan. Plays out the plane so that he can crack the clue at the end of the turn. I like it. Well played by Shahar.
Good clean play here from Shahar Shenhar. Now Paul Dean, again, he's the one who's under all the pressure, but he's slowly starting to stabilize this board. The deadlock trap making life a little bit tricky for Shenhar. Working well against the vehicles. But Paul really does need something else here to get this board under control. Because if, as we saw last time, he took 3 from the copter, which is never what he wants to be doing. And on top of it, Shahar's just, a creature or 2 away from crewing multiple vehicles and saying, yeah, trap one of them down, but you're still taking a bunch.
The missed land drop on turn 4 from Paul was absolutely crucial because despite being Teamer colors, his deck doesn't play Ishkanah. His main come back from behind card is Torrential Gearhulk, and he's still a turn away from that.
Okay. Yeah, he has scrapped together a land for the last 2 turns, but that gap is very real. And, Paul keeps his cards pretty close, but I did see he's got a Torrential Gearhulk in his hand, so he is ready to go. Tapping down a copter and enticing one of these 5/5s to run into it, but he can't do that this turn. So this could be a major issue here for Paul.
Speaking of ready to go, I see an Unlicensed Disintegration in Shahar's hand. Wow, what's
Spring
this card?
Sage Ritual? Is that what that is?
Yeah, and this is just what the doctor ordered. Destroy target artifact, gain 4 life.
Oh, man. He did it. Look at that. Wow. Pay 1 colorless more, gain 2 more life than Appetite. So a little bit of tech there for Paul Dean. And that was a 9-point life swing for him that turn. Wow, technology. Honestly, Reed, I'm just glad I remember what that card's name was.
That's actually a main deck card from Paul.
Oh, he's got one in the main?
I like that. I like that approach to deck building.
That's cool.
I place a tremendous value on being able to build some life gain into my slow control deck. And especially with 4 Torrential Gearhulk, the ability to flash back a card like that can really dig you out of some tough situations. And that's what it's doing in this game.
Jeez. Wow. Look at this. Man, so we got to exile that one, but yeah,
Paul's going to be up 4 life here, but I did see an Unlicensed Disintegration in Shahar's hand, so it's going to be a fairly neutral exchange.
Yeah, Shahar's going to have to use his energy from the Ether Hub to fire it off, but that's savage. That is a beating for sure.
Yeah, what a turnaround.
Wow, no kidding.
Destroy your 2 best permanents, gain 8 life. Don't mind if I do.
No kidding. And sure, he doesn't get to keep the Gearhulk because Shahar had one of the better removal spells, but you got to feel like that's going to put Paul in a much better position to actually stabilize this board, especially given the deadlock trap still sitting down there. 6 energy for Dean. This deck is weird, by the way. No Aetherworks Marvel in this deck. It looks like very much a deck that would want to play that, and it's just not. Ooh. Let's start collecting some clues here, Paul. Look at this. Double Tireless Tracker, land drop, go. And once again, we see the power of Deadlock Trap not costing mana to activate.
Absolutely.
You know, look what he was able to do this turn. 3-drop, 3-drop land that's tapped, and he still took no damage.
Now this game is going exactly as Paul wants it to go. He's got time in the world to use his slow card advantage engines, the double tireless tracker. He's going to be able to cast any more torrential gear hulks that he draws. And yeah, his life total is not in jeopardy, really.
No, there's just no way Shahar can come back from this, right? Like, after this turn, cracking 2 clues, he's got 2 5/4s and active Deadlock Trap. Should the Deadlock Trap be untapped, by the way? Did I miss something there?
Yes.
He tapped down the Caravan on Shahar's turn. I don't think he did any. I don't think he used it on his main.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
We called it.
That was starting to worry me a little bit, but and we even see Paul now attacking. He's got Negate in his hand. I think he might have 2 of them. And there's a Thalia, but that's, I believe, going to fall to a burn spell from Paul.
I gotta say, I really like Paul Dean's deck here.
Dude, this deck is
the Spring Sage
sweet.
Ritual sold me.
Man. And it was really great because you picked up on exactly what his game plan was with it immediately, and he even showed us right away as you were explaining it to us. And boy, was that a huge deal.
Oh, the trackers are up to 4 toughness, so he can safely Radiant Flames.
Okay.
He could even have cast the Radiant Flames for 2 if that's what he wanted to do.
All right, is that Deadlock Trap not untapped again? Oh, hey, he must have heard me. Thank you, Paul. And then this game's going to be over next turn. Whew. Wow, and you know what the crazy part is, too? Look at Paul's life total. It's exactly the life that he gained from Spring Sage Ritual times 2.
You're absolutely right.
He would be at a 0.
He took 20 damage this game.
Yes. Shahar's like, I thought I was supposed to do 20 damage. They told me to do 20. And Paul Dean takes the match 2-1. Man, I am going to keep... Look at Shahar. He's not too happy about that.
It was looking good for him for a while.
It really was.
I would have picked him for the winner at a couple turns in the middle there.
Paul's all smiles, though, and he should be. Okay, well, that is actually going to do it